So there's been any amount of talk over the last few weeks about the exodus of young players from the League of Ireland. Shamrock Rovers losing Danny Mandreu to Lincoln. Darragh Burns has left Pats to go to MK Dons. And really mixed views on whether this is a good or a bad thing for Irish football. And the deals, not much money coming into the League of Ireland, how damaging it is to the league to be losing their best young players mid-season for little or no money. While others feel that pre-Brexit, a lot of these players would have gone to England anyways at 14 or 15, and that they are now actually being better served by remaining at home in the league before moving across in their late teens or early 20s. Pat Deane is with Quorum Sports. He's an agent with Quorum Sports, and he has brokered quite a few deals over the past few weeks, including Dawson Devoy's move from Bohemians to MK Dons, Promise Omashare also leaving Bows to move to Fleetwood Town, and also one of the more interesting ones, which saw Liam Kerrigan move from UCD to Italy to sign with Como. Pat is on the line. Evening, Pat.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening.
As I say, we've spoken a lot about this over the last few weeks and the reasons behind it, and there's definitely a lot of frustration, I think, when people see somebody of the quality of Danny Mandreu, who's arguably been Shamrock Rovers, the league leader's best player this season, move to League One for in or around €30,000. You're obviously spending a lot of time looking at the League of Ireland. Why is it happening this way, and why are, say, League One sides and sides around Europe taking such an interest in the league at the moment?
Well, the factors are, I would say, Brexit is definitely a major factor. The clubs used to have players put to them from France, Sweden, Norway, Holland, Belgium, and in League One would have had a lot. Those players now won't be able to get past the threshold needed to get a work permit in the UK, whereas the Irish lads are eligible via the Common Travel Area, which has been around over 100 years. So that's why the League One clubs and the Championship clubs are looking at the Irish market, because it's a market that they know there's no language issues and there's no work permit issues, because to bring a player in, you do need especially in England, Scotland has a sort of like a little bit of a lower threshold with their exceptions panel, but an English club bringing in players from Europe now would have to get 15 points, and that would be, say, for example, if you played in the Bundesliga, you'd get 9 points, but if you played in Bundesliga 2, you'd only get 4 points. So those clubs aren't looking at Bundesliga 2 now. So that's the factor, whereas the Irish lads don't have that, don't have those issues to get any points. They can just, it's automatically under the Common Travel Area. But in the reverse, Liam's gone to a Serie B club, Como. They can't bring in players, non-EU players. So they can't bring in British players unless they had previously played in Italy. So that's why a lot of the Italian clubs are looking at the Irish market, because again, they're utilising the fact that they're members of Europe and the EU. So that's what I think it is mainly. It's mainly Brexit.
We might look at it from both sides then, from the club sides and from the players' side. From the English league clubs at the moment, say then League One, when they're looking at Ireland and they're looking for value, how much time are they spending assessing the players? Because there is quite a bit of money in League One, and the speculation is that some of the players have gone from, say, €1,000 a week to €3,000 a week. So it's in some ways a bit of a no-brainer. But the likes of MK Dons signing Darragh Burns and Dawson Devoy, are they spending a lot of time doing their due diligence on these players, or are they able to take a risk on bringing these players in because there's not much of an outlay for the clubs that they're buying from?
No, not at all. And there seems to be sort of like I seen it was reported in one of the papers that, like, even with Liam Kerrigan going to Como, that there wasn't money involved. There was money involved, and a substantial amount of money. So there's a
and is that upfront money?
Yeah. And then on rewards, if the player does well, the club does well. So no, I mean, everybody's talking about, say, Danny's one. and because he was such a high-profile player, and I presume when his agent did the deal, that was one of the considerations that he put into the contract, and rightly so, because Danny was, it was always going to attract interest from England. And what you don't want to do is for a player to sort of like have a massive hurdle of, say, an unrealistic fee, because maybe championship clubs can afford big money, and of course the Premier League can afford big money, but there's 24 clubs in League One. I would say only 8 of them, or maybe 9 of them, are in the market to buy players of significant value. So, but it doesn't mean they don't offer an opportunity. Like Lincoln would be a very well-run club,
You're all right.
With Danny going there, he's gonna experience an unbelievable professionalism, but he'll be playing the likes of Derby, Ipswich, Charlton, Bolton, Barnsley. It's a different level, and it's a bigger exposure.
There's no doubt about that, Pat, that when you look at some of those teams and the fan bases that are there and the overall budgets of the club, that League of Ireland teams simply can't compete. But these League One teams, in a way, they mustn't be able to believe their luck, that they're able to go and attract players of the quality of a Danny Mandre or a Darragh Burns, who've been playing men's football, who haven't been playing in youth leagues, who aren't tested, who've been playing European football, that they can get these players at such a good rate.
Yeah, it's definitely not they're not thinking they're going to. Well, Danny's a bit different because I don't know the ins and outs of that deal. But Darragh Burns wasn't cheap. Dawson Devoy wasn't cheap, and Promise O'Share wasn't cheap. So when I see on social media some of the figures banded about, they're wrong. The players are, how would I put it? 21. Dawson's only 20 years old. Promise is 21 years of age. They probably got hopefully 10 good years in their career. They have to think about, where are they going to be able to buy a house from? They want to have something out of football. So, do they really want to go over at 23 or 24 on a Bosman? No. And that's why if we take away the Danny Mandry one, the other ones weren't as cheap as people think they were at all. And the other question you asked me was, say, someone like MK Dons, what was their... MK Dons have been following these players, I presume, for years. I know that for a fact with Dawson, and I would exactly the same thing with Darragh as well. They're very, very hands-on. They've always been very pro-Irish players. I know their director of football's been over lots of times over in Ireland watching League of Ireland games. So it's not they're not getting players on the cheap, but there is value for money in the League of Ireland. I'll grant you that. But the other thing is the sell-ons for the clubs will be lucrative, because like a club like MK, they've sold Harry Darling, they've sold Scott Twine. They've only been at the club for a year and a bit. So it's going to benefit the League of Ireland in the long run, because there'll be money coming back into the league from deals done in 2022, and it might be coming back into the league in a bit like the Matt Doherty thing when he went from Wolves to Tottenham 10 years later. I think that's the exception, but I do feel that the clubs in England now respect the League of Ireland, and it does give them an element of the unknown, because there's certain clubs that know the market well. Portsmouth brought over Ronan Curtis a few years ago, so they know, I know the head of recruitment there very well. He's always very on the ball with regards to players in Ireland. So I think now the ones that had shied away from Ireland, that hadn't really done any business in Ireland, I think they're now questioning why they're not doing it. So that's probably why you've seen the Oxfords go over, do some business. But I think it's good. I think it's good for the players, because they're getting over there. They're going to be exposed to, the natural clubs that will look at them will be the championship clubs. So, whereas a player maybe in the past would have gone into the Championship and maybe not been ready at that level yet. I think League One will provide them with a development plan to be able to proceed up to the Championship. And I think with all the deals that have been done, I would say nearly all of them have got sell-ons.
I understand what you're saying about some of those deals that you feel they're being reported wrong, but like, fans are looking at the value that their clubs are getting, and I guess they're also looking at other stages of English football and thinking they're getting a raw deal in terms of the upfront payment for players. And like Daniel Lambert of Bohemians was talking about the clubs needing a better united front, a collective agreement, and talking about the get out clauses they're in the different contracts, saying that will require trust and cooperation not yet seen by League of Ireland clubs, that the biggest impediment to upfront fees are agent get out clauses, and these can be counteracted by clubs having a collective agreement to a certain level where no club breaks it and delivers higher fees for all. And listen, obviously you have a very vested interest in all of this in a different way, but do you think there's a way of the clubs working together to get a better value to keep players in the league for longer?
And I can fully understand that. But again, if Promise or Dawson didn't have a release clause, would they be playing in the English League this season? I doubt it, because, maybe the valuation. I've seen transfers fall flat on their face in England on two clubs having two totally different views of what the player's worth. And I think with the release clauses, because again, these weren't cheap release clauses. They were not, they weren't insignificant amounts of money. It clears the player that if a club comes in and prepared to pay a decent amount of money, it then allows the player to go off and earn a decent amount of money for themselves. And
what is a decent amount of money, just in terms of fees, do you think, for like Dawson Devoy's in Ireland under 21 international? Is 100 grand for a League One club a decent amount of money, or should it be $500,000?
I would honestly say to you, there'd be clubs in League One that would never pay 100,000. They wouldn't have the ability to pay 100,000. They wouldn't have the big boys, the Ipswiches, of course they would. But the only people that can pay probably a lot more regularly than 100,000 on a transfer fee would be the Championship. So it's a different road. It's going over there. I mean, the amount of games in League One is ridiculous. There's 30 games between now and Christmas, I think, for majority of the clubs. So if a player goes over, say, for 100,000, and then with the exposure of 80, 90 games in League One, a big club, say a Middlesbrough, comes in and says, right, we want to pay 7 figures, then the club in Ireland, of course, is going to benefit. But would a Middlesbrough come in and pay 7 figures for a player in Ireland? The exceptions have been, Gavin Bazuna, who's done fantastically, but they are the exception. So the players who, like I said, who have benefited from, say, the schoolboy football changing a bit, where it goes into the clubs, and the clubs, they do deserve development money, but not if, say, for example, that they put an unrealistic amount. The player's not going. And the other side of the coin as well, and as an agent, I've got players who I've had managers ring me up and ask to tear the contract up. We don't want him and we can't afford him. Can you persuade him? So, there's an element of, he's under contract, he's our player, we have to give permission. But the other breath, when the players, and a lot of these boys, I'd say 85, 90%, I'd love to know the exact figure, are on 40, 42-week end-of-season contracts. So there's no security for them, and that's what you've got to understand. These lads have been given an opportunity to get 3 or 4 years of, good money, good training, good facilities, playing in front of bigger crowds. And, the way 90% of the deals are structured, once they make it, and a lot more League of Ireland players are making it now, maybe because they don't go over as early. But once they make it, then the clubs will be talking about, fantastic, such and such is now, done very well. Has got, like Luke McNally got bought after a year at Oxford United. So there's money going in there. So I think we look at the positives and not the negatives, and be realistic, because I get on well with Daniel, and he fought very hard with the clubs to get as good a deal as possible for Bohemians, and they have got a good deal on both the players that I got involved with. But there's also the other. What about the players who they don't want? What about the players who are on 40-week contracts? They can't get a mortgage, can't buy a house. Do you know what I mean? It's not just the lads who are going over and have made it. There's a so if they say, we won't have a release clause, will the clubs unite? I don't think they will, because I do think that there's commercial instincts will kick in. The manager wants the player, and they get offered a decent release clause, just say a 6-figure release clause. Why would they turn that down?
If somehow for the first time ever all of the League of Ireland clubs managed to put forward a united front, what would it mean for you as an agent? How much more difficult would it make your job?
The uncertainty creeps in, and the uncertainty is I'm using an English club or a Scottish club as an example to the UK. There might be a preconception that the club's got more money than they actually have. Do you see what I'm saying? So, no, we want more, or they might want to hold out for a bigger club to come in, but the bigger club might not be the fit for the player. So, for example, a bigger club might want the player, but he might be a year away from the first team. Whereas the players enjoyed first team experience with the League of Ireland club, and they want to keep the momentum going. So maybe there's to get to the big championship or the big Premier League club, there might be another stepping stone.
Well, I'm thinking more that we look at it at the moment that like the League One clubs in a way hold all the aces because they can offer a fee, albeit some may say not substantial, but even if it's 100,000 for a player, they can also maybe triple a player's wages, offer them a better life. But actually, the League One clubs' opportunities to bring player in have also been restricted because of Brexit. So there aren't too many places they can look for quality players outside of Ireland. So actually, everybody coming together with me that those League One clubs would need to start upping whatever money they're spending, would need to start spending it in the league, and the 100,000 goes to suddenly 250,000, which is huge for a League of Ireland club.
Yeah, and that would be huge for a League One club to pay. Like I said, there'd be maybe 6 clubs that could pay that sort of money.
How many League of Ireland players are you representing at the moment?
I have probably around 12 players I represent. Ranging from 18 upwards, and but players like Dawson, Promise, Liam. I've represented Liam 4 years, Promise 5 years, Dawson, 4 years, 5 years as well. So this isn't an overnight thing. These are players that I've worked with for a very long time. Like with Liam now, he's in an unbelievable situation. He's loving it over there. He's got a brilliant opportunity. He's done his exam. He's got his 2-1 there. We always knew when we took him on that he wasn't going anywhere for 4 years. I had loads of clubs, sort of wanting him and whatever. And each one I said he's going nowhere until he finishes his exams. And he finished his exams mid-May. And that was it. Now he's going to give football 100%, So, and I think where he's gone to has been a brilliant fit. I went over there with him and his father, a beautiful part of the world. And like I said, now was there 5 players have gone over to Italy. So, it isn't just the UK, and the Italians club have more money than League One. Yes, they do. Yeah. But
a lot of the League of Ireland clubs are now better run than they were 5-10 years ago. When you look at those, say, dozen players you have, if a League of Ireland club came and offered them a 3-year contract with no get-out clause, would you allow them to sign it?
I would have to paint the picture that, commercially, unless they're getting paid a commercial wage, which is you know, again, going back to most professional footballers, if you ask them what's your goals, they want to play as high as they can, but they also want, say, at least a house out of it. And I keep harping on about it, but the players, you know, they've given up a lot to be a professional footballer. They want, this is their goal. I mean, I've got Conor McCarthy, who's got a degree in economics, and he's just signed for Barnsley there now. You know, he could get a job in you know, in the finance sector, but he wants to see how high he can go. But of course, he wants to be paid accordingly. And as it stands at the moment, I just, you know, apart from the big clubs in the League of Ireland, would it be fair for a 17-year-old to sign a £300 a week, 40 end of season 42 or 40-week contract for 3 years with no get-out clause? I wouldn't recommend it.
There is definitely a split in terms of whether there's more talent coming through than there ever has been before, or whether they're just staying that little bit longer. So we look at the Premier League this season, and you know, there might be half a dozen Irish players playing in it at most. The way you're talking there, it doesn't seem as though Championship clubs rate the League of Ireland highly enough that they're going to go in. When you look at the talent pool that's coming through and the different systems that have been put in place to make the academy systems and the underage academies at the League of Ireland clubs, is the quality improving? Do you feel, are we going to get to a stage where Championship clubs are going to start, the Championship clubs who can afford to spend $500,000 on a player?
I think, you know, I did Jake O'Brien to Crystal Palace there. Jake had 10 first-team games at 19 years of age with Cork City when he went over to Crystal Palace, and that's a move which I see there's probably going to be a lot more of those, where the bigger clubs will bring him into the academies and they'll be prepared to pay money and offer good sell-ons. You know, if the player makes it, you know, the clubs are, you know, conditioned to now reward the development, the clubs that they got the players from with good signing on fees. You know, the sell-on fees have definitely increased. You know, there really are, you know, that's where the academies will be rewarded is when the players move, because they'll be getting money. They'll be working on their sort of like the new crop coming through, but the old crop have paid significant amounts because, you know, like I said, the sell-on fees have been very, very, you know, have increased. So, you know, for the clubs in Ireland. So, you know, they might not be getting as much money up from the League One clubs, but that's short term. But on the long term, they're getting good sell-on fees. They really are. I see the clubs in England, you know, especially selling clubs like Fleetwood are a selling club, MK Dons are a selling club. You know, they're prepared to, if the player does well, they're prepared to, you know, sort of pass the proceeds on, as they say, to the clubs in Ireland. So it's not like they're going over.
A Luke McNally transfer is sort of a manna for heaven from you in terms of a sales pitch, that you go to Oxford, suddenly you make that step up to Burnley, and then all you need to do is look at the Nathan Collins scenario, and suddenly you're, you know, in terms of what they're buying then, because obviously the big Premier League academies can afford to spend some money and put somebody into their under-23 team and leave them there for a couple of years, and if they make it, they'd well and good. If they don't, they'll settle them on to a Championship or a League One side. For the Dawson, the Boys, the Promise Oma shares who are, you know, been playing, as I say, men's football, League of Ireland football for the last couple of seasons and making an impact, are they going over to England and expecting to play? Would you expect them to be full first team squad members this season?
Without a shadow of a doubt. No ifs, buts or maybe. They're not. They might take time to get into the manager's starting 11, but they're going over there as full first team players. You know, so it's like I said, it keeps the momentum going that the League of Ireland have done for them, which is, you know, they're getting, you know, you look at again Bohemians, they play young players. Ross Tierney's gone to Motherwell, had a great season. Dawson's gone to MK. Promise has gone to Fleetwood now. You know, you'll be hearing a lot more about these players, you know, because they'll get in, they'll play, and they'll do the Bose supporters and the Bose management and the club proud. They're always going to be Bose players. They haven't gone where they within Ireland. There's only 10 clubs, as you know, in terms of Premier Division. You've got the Galways and the Corks coming through and whatever. But the reality, I think, the players that I represent have always had that ambition and the hunger to the top of every mountain's the bottom of the next one. And if they do well and get established in the League of Ireland, they want to then move on to the next challenge, which is Scotland or England.
So in a way, have you been pushing an open door with the players over the past few months? Because, again, I look at someone like Dawson Devoy, who's playing first team football every week, has absolutely loved the Bohemians, is in and around the under-21 squad. There's definitely a risk for him going over to MK Dons in terms of his international aspirations, like any player needing to make that step up to the next level. Do all these players feel, and there's probably a lot of factors, like I think you touched on some of them, like the cost of living in Dublin has come up with a couple of conversations I've had with people for 20, 21-year-olds, like they're simply, as a League of Ireland player, not going to get a mortgage, never mind try and, at the moment, rent a place in Dublin. Is it a very straightforward decision for the players to go when this opportunity comes up?
I used to have the saying, there's two types of football players. There's players with too much money at the end of the month, and there's players which and too much month at the end of the money. And unfortunately, the young lads, to fill it, I when I speak to the club secretaries and the chairman to get a decent wage for the players, I say to them, especially the ones where they don't get paid over Christmas, they want to buy their parents a Christmas present. It costs them to fill up the tank of diesel or a tank of petrol, the same as everybody else. There's no discounts given to these football players, and some of the wages are, they can't live on it, and so when you get the opportunity to go, you're close to the first team. If like you're talking about Dawson and Promise, watch this space in these two guys. They back themselves. They're both brilliant footballers. They're Liam as well. Liam's going over, and he's, he's doing very well in pre-season. He's had some good results there. The feedback I'm getting from Dennis Wise is absolutely fantastic. The feedback I'm getting from the lads from MK, they're very happy with the way Dawson. So they're not going over there and not to be heard of again. They'll be going over there and you'll be watching them score goals on Sky Sports.
We need some sort of an exclusive before you go, Pat. Who's next? Well, I can't, and like, text us afterwards, and we'll just say our sources have told us.
I'll tell you on the QT after you sign a non-disclosure.
Perfect. All right. Pat, thanks a lot for coming on. It's good to get the insight from the other side of things. I'm sure we'll be talking about it a lot more over the next while as well. Pat Deane there from Quorum Sports.
Thank you very much.
All our football coverage on Off the Ball is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sports and Premier Sports.